I wanted to share a little bit of information about how you could do a quick at-home bicep and tricep workout. So first thing to know is that the bicep has how many heads? Two heads. There's a long head, and then there's a short head. So it's important that as we're training our bicep, we're using both the long head and the short head. The long head we typically use. It's the top part of our bicep, which everyone tends to see, right? We do a lot of things in this plane of action. We drive our cars, we pick things up. If you can think about your hands being like in a hammerhead curl position, this muscle gets used often. That's our long head. Our short head is when our hands are supinated, meaning our palms are facing up, and the short head is the very, very top of the bicep. And it doesn't get used as often because we don't do a lot of things with our hands like this. And so it's important as you're training your biceps that you're working both the long head and the short head. So here are some ideas you could do at home. We're going to do a set of 4. We're doing 10 to 12 reps of each exercise. And it's important that you think about your perceived exertion. So perceived exertion just means how hard I feel like I'm working. We shouldn't be moving to failure on every set. We're going to start at about a 7.5 and work our way up to a 9. So 7.5 is our first round, and then 8, and then 8.5, and then a 9. So how do you know when you've reached your perceived exertion of failure? It's when your body starts wanting to do some statures or some postures that you're compensating the weight. So it's difficult, but it's still doable. Let's work on our first exercise, which is going to be a long head bicep curl using a hammerhead. So grab some free weights if you have them laying around. If you don't have them laying around, you can always use a tube. If you have any tubing, you can use those as well. So to work the long head, our palms are going to be facing inside. So imagine holding a steering wheel of a car. The bicep works when it's in flexion. And so when the arms are in extension here, the bicep is at rest. It's stretching. As we lift up and curl the weights, that's when our bicep is contracting on top. So you can see this angle is really tight. Now, if I'm only coming to here, the bicep really isn't getting a chance to contract. When I come all the way on top, it's contracting. Lowering down causes it to rest. Pulling back up causes it to work. That's what we're looking for. So you'll see people that will swing behind the body. That's called gravity, right? That's called gravity. We want to avoid using gravity. Put the weights in your pockets and then lift back up again. Put the weights in your pockets and lift back up again. Another way you can make it more difficult if you don't have weights that you feel like are heavy enough is the time under tension. I can lift slowly for 3 and I can lower slowly for 3. Great job. I can lift for 3. So when I'm doing a bicep curl, a hammerhead curl, I'm thinking about a match on a box at the very top of the contraction. So I can also increase the contraction by not resting the weights on my shoulders, but then by lifting my elbows up, it creates a tighter contraction and then lowering back down again. Speed is not your friend when it comes to doing weight training and strength training. We want to go slow. We should know which muscle group is firing. Right now, it's the long head of our bicep, the long head of our bicep. The other thing to keep in mind is the elbows flaring out. Those are your shoulders working. We're working the long head of the bicep. We would do a series of 4 sets, 8 to 10 reps or 10 to 12 reps, depending on how you feel, doing a hammerhead curl. Let's think about the other head of our bicep, which is going to be the short head. Now, you could use an ottoman, anything you have laying around the house, but to work the short head, I'm going to use a ball, and I'm going to do what's called a preacher curl. The short head is typically not as strong and not as used as frequently as your long head. So you're going to want to lessen your weight load while doing the preacher curl because you're not going to be able to push as much weight in the beginning. And in fact, it may be that you're working with a range of motion and not using any weight, which is great if you can slow down and think about what's supposed to be happening, meaning a contraction on the short head of your bicep. So I'm going to come down to my mat. I'm going to show you from the side here and also from the front. I'm going to grab my free weights. I'm going to tuck the ball into my belly. I'm opening up my legs and I'm kind of hugging the ball. So I'm trying to get my feet to rest on my my seat to rest on my feet. So I'm leaning forward. My palms are facing up. Now even this movement, you can see the stretch from my bicep is much greater than if I were standing upright. My bicep is very exposed and vulnerable. I'm going to pull the weights up to my shoulders, and then I'm going to lower back down again. Now, this is challenging. I'm not going to use gravity. I'm not going to bounce. I'm going to take my time and think about how. And if you look at your bicep, you'll see it roll to the top of the shoulder, and then you'll see it roll back down again. The bicep is resting here and stretching. The bicep is working and contracting on top. So if we don't come all the way up top, it's not getting a chance to contract. It's so important. That little matchbox right on top there, it's contracting every time I'm pulling my belly in. And my weight load, like I said, is significantly less because the front plane, this front curl is much more difficult. But I'm still going to use my perceived exertion and think about this is about a 7.5 as far as difficulty. Now, what happens if it gets so difficult that you feel like you have to stop? Well, that's exactly what you should do. You should stop. Take a breather, take a rest, reset your body, and go back to it again. It doesn't make any sense to just finish the exercise set and not have the proper muscle group firing. It's okay. Come out of it and then come right back to it again. Okay, we just learned about the bicep. 2 heads, long head, short head. Make sure you're training both heads. Both heads, okay? Now let's talk about how the body works in most cases, except for multi-pivotal joints, meaning our shoulders and our hips. Most muscle groups have an antagonistic muscle group, meaning one is working and one is stretching. So think about this. We just learned about our bicep, which has 2 heads. We learned when the bicep is lengthened, it's an extension, it's resting. When the bicep is in contraction, it's working. So think, what is the antagonistic muscle group of the bicep? What does it work with? The bicep and the tricep. Those 2 work together. So think about this. When the arm is in extension, the bicep is at rest. But what is working? The tricep. When the bicep is in contraction, what is at rest? Now the tricep is at rest. So every time you're doing a bicep curl or a tricep dip, there's one working and one stretching. One working, one stretching. It's so important we think about this. As we're doing our lifting, you're going to become much more effective and the muscles will fire more readily. Now, the tricep, we said, has 3 heads. The first is the lateral head, and then the long head, and then the medial head. So there's 3. And you're thinking, oh, my bicep is bigger than my tricep. Actually, the tricep is a larger working muscle group. We just don't always activate all the heads of our tricep, and those heads attached to our humerus bone up top here, okay? So our lateral head, the first exercise we're going to do is a tricep dip. And it happens, we know, the tricep activates in extension. So this particular exercise, you're going to grab a box, or you could use a stair if you'd like. And we are going to come into a bridge position. My hips are lifted up tall. My hands are right below my shoulders. Now think about this. In this position, my tricep is activating, right? I'm pressing away from my box, and my tricep is firing. This is the major head. The lateral head is what most people see and what they work. We dip down, and then we press back up again. So let's think about this. I want you to say it if you can. My bicep is working in contraction. My tricep is working in extension. Again, so this is my bicep. This is my tricep. Again, this is my bicep. And then this is my tricep. Very good. Perceived exertion, we're going to do 10 to 12 reps. You can always add a pulse in order to encourage a little bit more firing. The next exercise we're going to do is going to be our long head. We're going to do a skull crusher. We can use our ball or we can use our bench. Either way, we're going to quickly put our shoulders on the bench in a skull crusher. Our hands are going to be in a hammerhead position. My hips are lifted high. Reminder that this is working the long head. We come down, touch the shoulders, we press back up. Very good. This is the bicep in contraction. This is the tricep in extension. This is the bicep in contraction. This is the tricep in extension. Again, finding 10 to 12 reps. Our last head of the tricep, which no one uses, not no one uses, most people know about it, is the medial head, okay? The medial head runs on the inside of the arm. And I'm going to show you an exercise. You don't need any weight to do this one. We are going to simply bend and flex over. My palm is again supinated, so that means it's going to be to the ceiling. I'm going to flex forward. I'm going to simply put my thumb to my knee. I'm going to lift an extension. Now, I want to make sure that my shoulder isn't up towards my ear. I want to pull it away from the body as if someone were reaching on my fingertips and stretching me long. Bring it down and rest again. Pressing up. Small pulse. And back down again. Pressing up. Small pulse. Back down again. Now you want to make sure you hold the contraction on top here. We get tired. We start standing up. We have less weight we're pushing. Stay flat. Make the back flat. Extend the fingertips towards the outside of the room and reach and pulse. These muscle groups work together, one at rest, one at play. Just to quickly review, our bicep has two heads, the long head and the short head. Make sure you're training them both. With the bicep, we have the tricep. It has three heads. We have the lateral head, the long head, and the medial head. Get creative when you're training. Make sure you're incorporating them all together for your next workout.